Welcome to Wharton Moneyball. Welcome to a full hour of sports analytics here on the Wharton Podcast Network. This is Cade Massey hosting this week with my longtime collaborators and friends, co-hosts, colleagues, Shane Jensen and Eric Bradlow. Our fourth co-host, Adi Weiner, not in today. Sadly, Adi out and about. Adi doing Adi things. Adi doing things the rest of us are jealous of. Adi's not going to be with us today, but he will be back. Some combination of us, y'all know this, some combination of us are here almost every week of the year. 48, 49, 50 weeks of the year, we're here doing the show. Have been for more than 11 years now. Delighted to be back. We're recording on Tuesday afternoon, as we usually do. Going to do an hour. Going to do the first half hour with guests. Going to roll into open lines, open topics in the second half hour. Going to start the show straight away with the guest and one of our regulars, one of our favorites, one of our long times, a family, practically families, Wharton Moneyball family, Brian Burke. Brian Burke is here from ESPN. Brian, thank you for making time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Always enjoy being on, and I feel like the fifth Beatle, kind of like I want to be a co-host. And I feel like you watch like a show long enough, like Seinfeld, right? And you're like, I could be in the apartment with Jerry and Elaine and George, and we'd all just get along.
Here's what
hold on. I think you're the Eric Clapton of the Beatles. I think that's the right role for you. I'm going to give you the.
I was going to say, Brian, the next time I can offer for myself, the next time it's just me that's available, rather than me talking to myself for an hour on the radio. Why don't you come join me and you can co-host with me and we'll talk some sports for an hour.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I want to be the designated Adi.
That's tough, man. That's tough.
Those are some big shoes to fill, literally.
He asks the toughest questions, and I appreciate that more than anything, even when he's asking me the tough questions, because you learn that way.
Yeah. We all aspire to more oddiness in our intellectual work, for sure. Brian, as most of y'all know, is at ESPN. He's a sports data scientist at ESPN. He's also the founder of the website Advanced Football Analytics. He was one of the very first to step out when football analytics started getting sophisticated. He was a Navy fighter pilot in a previous life. He moved from this black and white engineering world into the shades of gray probability, big transformation, midlife transformation. And now he's right on the edge of all things football analytics. Brian, so much to talk about. Week one is in the books. Why don't we start there? We've got deeper topics for you, but you're a football guy. You've been waiting all season for this to happen. Now that we've seen 16 games played, what's top of mind for you?
Yeah. A team that impresses me the most right now is Green Bay. Obviously they picked up a superstar defender, convincing win over a top conference and division opponent. And so we actually we're looking at them with the fourth best chance to make a Super Bowl. So,
talk real quickly about your fourth best chance. Is that one of these flat maxima situations? Because this seems like a pretty open year. So what do the first three look like, and where's the pack?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. It pretty much always is that way. It's a little flatter this year than normal, but we have Baltimore, Buffalo, Philadelphia, and then Green Bay. Here's another one I'll throw out. I'm just looking at this. Chargers have a better shot over Kansas City right now. Obviously, they have a win in hand over them, but I'm still really surprised to see that. But we'll see if that comes to pass. I'm always prepared. One of the last questions sometimes is like, what are you looking for, in this upcoming season? And I'm waiting for the Chiefs to kind of have a down year. They're way overdue, but this could be that year.
Brian, what would you take as an early marker? It's easy to call a down year, 3/4 of the way through the season. If you want to call it early, being a good prognosticator, what would be a sign of this is going to be a bad year for the Chiefs?
Gosh, Chris Jones not playing well. Yeah, just early injuries. They've already got a suspended player. So yeah, just depletion early on, and just losing a couple games that they shouldn't. I mean, the Brazil game, it's really weird. There's just a lot of travel. It's international. It's the first game of the year. You can set that aside, but that would be one thing to look at. They've been so good for so long. Maybe it is time. Maybe it's just me wish casting as an AFC, rival fan, but it could be. It's the thing to look
Brian.
for.
I lit my candles last week on this show, said my prayers, put it out there as a long suffering, not just one AFC team, but two AFC teams beating at the door behind the Chiefs. I'm ready for them to step aside. Eric's trying to jump in here. Speaking of, a little AFC allegiance, a little bit.
No, I'm staying with my question is more your answer to Kate's question. So when Kate asked you, like, what caught your eye in week one, I could imagine a lot of things. One could be which teams are at the top. Two is which teams surprised you the most. Three, it could be which teams FPI move the most. Which teams exceeded the line the most, which could be different than which teams move the most. How did you think about answering Kate's question, and what was surprising to you? And I'm leaving surprising broadly defined here.
I mean, that's a good way to organize all those things. The Colts moved the most up, just because the size of their victory was so big. And the way FPI works is basically EPA per play. So if you have big chunk EPA gains, and your defense plays really well on top of that, then you're gonna move up. And the priors are fairly weak on the NFL side, so it's easy for teams to move. They bumped up almost 3 points on a per game basis. So if we thought that they were, let's say, a 3-point underdog against the average team on a neutral site, now we think they're probably just about average is where we.
This is great because you've answered my question, because I was going to say you're not focused purely on the difference in their rank, because they could be very bunched up and so they moved a little bit but they jumped. You're actually focused on their underlying latent strength parameter, which is something that's continuous, which seems to me to be a better measure of strength.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely correct. So in the NFL in particular, the middle, so like the middle 20 teams, let's say, are bunched up together, almost indistinguishable in a certain way. Like, we might have, the number 12 best team ranked as like a +1 over the average team, 1 point per game over the average team. And, the 20th or 22nd best team might be, -1 or 1.5 or something like that. But then there's this uncertainty around all of them, and they're just kind of in this muddied middle. So you can shoot up a bunch of rank numbers pretty easily, especially early in the year. The Bengals are one. They struggled against the Browns, so they got moved down. So they're the second biggest mover. Looks like Houston as well. They dropped a few rank points, but yeah, the Bengals just did not impress.
Brian, can you talk a little bit more about FPI in general? How much do y'all revise that year over year? My sense is that some years it's minor tweaks, some years it's major tweaks. Where are we in the cycle, and what has been your role? How confident do you feel about that power ranking system?
It's a really good question, especially in light of the college rankings last week. We took some arrows. We can get into that if you like, but I rebuilt this FPI model from the ground up, starting last season. So last season was the first year with a new, completely new revised model. It's not only rebuilt every year though, as far as like the parameters go, it's rebuilt every time we run it. It relearns all the different parameters and how heavy the priors should be weighted and all the other kind of hyperparameters within the model. It's a Bayesian regression. So everything is kind of relearned. It's always sort of up to date. It goes back uses about the past 10 seasons to kind of calibrate things. So I'm really confident. It did like embarrassingly well last year. So well that I know we're just due for a horrible reversion to the mean this season. But yeah, really confident. Part of the reason we're so confident is the priors are very solid. We kind of cheat and we reverse engineer the Vegas over under like win totals as kind of our starting point for the priors. So we're always pretty chalk in the beginning of the year.
Okay. Well, let's stay with that for a second, because you said it's Bayesian, and of course this is quite a Bayesian podcast, if only implicitly. But the hallmark, I would say, is that only probably most outside Bayesian person on the podcast, I would say the hallmark is this whole idea that you have priors and that you update with as new information comes in. That's kind of the hallmark of a Bayesian system. And so it's one thing to backwards engineer priors from the betting market. That's fine. Lots of folks can do that. But now you've got to decide how much weight to give those things. Yeah. And so can you talk to us about what you find? What's the optimal weight? And we often talk about it in terms of, I think I got this term somewhere, fellas, fictitious sample size. Like, how many games worth of information is in the prior? Meaning, after how many games of the season is the rating that you have on the team half prior and half games? Shane, I'm sorry for staying in there for just a second.
Yeah, if I could just add a specific kind of thing too. You talked earlier about how, these teams after week 1 are moving quite a bit because of these carefully designed priors. It sounds like you don't actually put much weight on to start the season. I'm a little surprised by that.
Well, we don't decide the weight of the prior. The model decides itself. So we're looking at the past 10 seasons or so, and we're letting the model find the way I term it is like the least unlikely. They're all unlikely. All these parameters are extremely unlikely. We have the Ravens number 1 right now, like plus 6.1 points per game. The chance that they actually end up that way, or that they are like, sort of, ground truth, truly 6.1 is extremely unlikely. It's just the least unlikely of all the different. And then the weights of the priors, basically the width of the prior distributions, the uncertainty around our estimates is basically what the weight is when we say weight of the priors. And that is left for the model to learn on its own.
Yep. Yeah, I was going to say, this is a specific term, as you know, Brian, in Bayesian inference. That's why it also pays to be Bayesian. Besides, it's the only coherent form of inference. It's called self-norming. You don't have to decide the weight. It decides the weight. It's the ratio of, in some sense, what Kay described, the effective number of games in the prior, in this case, the effective number of games in the likelihood or the data, but the data decides that. And so
with an extra loop where you cross-validate. The model doesn't inherently, a Bayesian model does not decide that. You're adding an extra loop over kind of like the, cross-validation kind of loop over possible weightings of the prior and the likelihood. I guess I'll rephrase my question. I'm surprised that the priors are given by this process a small weight.
Well, we don't know. He doesn't know.
I don't know if it's small.
You might be exaggerating. You might be overemphasizing his comment that things move.
It's smaller than college. I'll say that. It's smaller.
Well, the fact that you would move, say, the Chargers over the Chiefs based on one game, I think shows that the data is maybe.
That wasn't the power ranking. That was the forecast.
Right. So we think the Chiefs are slightly better than the Chargers still, but because of that win in hand and the chance that they'll have the tiebreaker at the end of the year as well, just those two things are enough to give them a better chance at the Super Bowl, given at the current snapshot.
I'm asking my question because I'm always trying to develop my own intuition, but also helping our listeners develop their intuition for how much weight we should have on priors, because that's kind of the whole game, is how much we're reacting to new information when it comes in. And there are lots of people who aren't doing this empirically, and they're saying, well, at this point in the season, we shouldn't have any old information, so we're just kind of writing it down to zero, which we would oppose. But I think that is so wrong, because I think if you let the model tell you what's optimal, and what we're saying is what's optimal for prediction. So when you say, I let the model tell me what the weight should be, that's because the model's looking historically over 10 years. If I wanted to predict as effectively as possible, I would keep this weight. It would move like this. Great. Yeah. Do you have any sense? I know that you weren't prepared for this question, but I'm asking you, at the halfway point or at the end of the season, what's the weight of the prior still? Because I think most people don't have good intuition.
I don't know. I can exactly the way. I can't give you a number. I know it's still there. It never goes away. And it probably shouldn't in the vast majority of cases. One of the things I have been thinking of is that, but before I get into that, I will say one of the things I have studied in the past is how much luck is involved. in observed outcomes. And I know that you get in the NFL, I think you have to get past maybe 11 games before sort of the observed signal is as strong as the random share the variance in game outcomes. So you can it's a pretty easy exercise to do with the binomial distribution. The variance of a purely random binomial, and then you have the variance of the actual game outcomes, and you can just subtract the variances, and so I think you have to get past the 11th game before you are just break even with the luck. So everybody take a breath, take a couple breaths.
Real
Because
long,
and the thing I mentioned with the college, our college FBI is at the other end of its kind of life cycle. It is at the end of its life cycle. It's not as modern as the NFL model is. I'm not exactly sure. I don't work directly on that project, but we were criticized because Texas lost to Ohio State. And they remained number one in FPI. And a lot of people don't quite fully understand what FBI is supposed to be doing, combined with a lot of conspiracy thoughts and other things. And we took a lot of arrows for that. But I think the priors are stronger on the college side, and that's probably why they stuck.
No. It wasn't even that. The post-game expectancy was not only pro Texas, but it was like wildly pro Texas. Like the signal in the game, to the extent that there was signal in the game, favored Texas. Like I think Bill Connolly said it was one of the biggest discrepancies. It was the biggest discrepancy of week one. It was one of the bigger ones you'll see.
Yeah, we took I think we took solace. I think Bill had Texas like 15th or something after that. So we're like, yeah, we know we're wrong, but we're not alone. But
hold on. You're saying Bill dropped Texas to 15 after
I don't think they started very high. I don't think they had nearly as high. We had them as a solid number one going into the season. I don't think he was as high, but I don't know.
Sure
I don't
Bill's
want to
not is Bill just putting his thumb on this scale? He doesn't like Texas. He's an Oklahoma guy at heart. I'm joking, of course, but I would take whether they're 1 or 15. I think that's interesting. You moved too little, he moved too much, it seems.
Yeah, we did move them down. I mean, they lost by one score on the road, against a great team, and so they're not going to move very much. So it's just a question of how tightly were they bunched, kind of going in to that game, and we had our priors are unlike the NFL on the NFL side. They're kind of purely we don't cheat with them. They're built on top of how well you did last year, how many returning starters do you have? Did your coach change? I think there's some special attention placed on a returning quarterback. And that's what drives. Oh, and how many, 4 or 5 star recruits do you have in the pipeline over the last, I don't know, like 2 or 3 years or so? And that used to work really, really well. Yeah, and over the last, 2 years or 3 years, the sport has completely changed. And so that no longer works as well. And we should probably have a lot less confidence in our preseason estimates of these teams.
Well, it'll be fun when the FPI, I first got to know it on the college scene. And when it first came out, I thought it was one of the best public models available. And we found it really tracked Massey Peabody, which impressed us. And this is just speaking to how hard it is to keep up. I mean, the world evolves, not only the world evolves, but other people jump in, competition evolves, and you got to stay on top of things if you want to be a cutting edge power ranking system. And let me just say, I mean, it is, of course, the realm of the geeks, and we are all geeks in this podcast, but the claim is you don't understand the game very well, or you don't understand what you're looking at very well if you can't predict what's going to happen. It's almost the hallmark of how well you understand it if you can predict what happens next. And so I take it, this is kind of performance evaluation. It's like, do you understand? I mean, can you really tell us who's good and why they're good? And if you could, then you could predict what's going to happen next. And that's really hard to do. So let's all just compete on who can predict, because it says something about how well we understand the game.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and that's true of science in general. You have a theory, and theories make predictions, and you test the theory based on, how closely the observations track with the predictions. And that, basically what we're talking about is like a science of football, just applying the scientific method to something that
Yeah, it's wildly, hard to pin down. Of course, there's so much that we don't understand yet. And there's so much that we don't understand because we're not as deep in the game as the people who do it for a living. And let's talk about a detail of the game. Another thing that you've done in your football life is build fourth down models. And so I know you continually tweak those as well, because we think they're really good and then we find holes and we make them better. We find some more holes, we make them better. But there was a questionable fourth down call, the high profile game. One of the highest profile games of the weekend was Baltimore going up to Buffalo. Lost a 15-point lead in the last 4 minutes of the game, including a decision to punt the ball away late. Do you have a take on that decision, and how should we think about it? How are you thinking about it?
Yeah, the model had, I think, 80% for go for it. The initial play-by-play, I think, had it a 4th and 2, and I think later they changed it to a 4th and 3, which isn't going to change things very much because we had the punt at 70%. So I'm approximating. So I think it might have been like 81 versus 72 or something like that. So the order of magnitude of the error is like 10%, like win probability. Which is
Brian, you're going a little shorthand. Some who may not be familiar, including possibly me. 81 versus 72.
Oh, chance to win. So if I go for it, your chance of winning in that situation would be about 81%. If you punted in that situation, we would estimate it's about 72, 71, something like that. It was about 80 to 70, which is a huge difference. Most even big, sort of enormous, obvious fourth down errors can be maybe like 2 percentage points of win, or 3 percentage points of win probability. So when you get somebody like John Harbaugh with a 10% error, something is up, something is off. And after the game, I think there's reporting that Lamar Jackson was cramping in that final series. So, and he's integral, obviously, to any kind of short yardage. And they elected to punt. So I think that played a part. I watched the play before. If you watch very closely, Ed Oliver absolutely obliterates Lamar Jackson on the play before. And I think that was probably, there's some, that would cause some quote unquote cramping for sure. I think that must have played into it because the Ravens have really been the best at this for a long time. And in fact, there was almost an identical situation. I think it was 2021, week 2 against the Chiefs. And they had a small lead, within a field goal lead. And there was about 2 minutes left to play. They were faced with a 4th and 2 on their own side of the field, about their own, 39, 38 yard line, exact same spot on the field. They went for it, converted, and kept the win. So very surprising, but I think the answer lies with just banged up quarterback.
Something we don't know. Interesting. Really interesting. Shane, were you trying to get in?
No, I mean, I guess it is interesting to kind of hear that, maybe that context that Brian just brought up, just because, I was going to kind of jump in and say, like, of all the teams to go for it on 4th and 3, I think maybe only Philadelphia would be a higher chance of converting, I think, in general, the personnel that the Ravens have. But now you say that, if Lamar was, kind of banged up and very kind of locally right around that play, that would help explain it. That would be the only thing in my mind that would.
Do the Bills know that, though? Do the Bills know that? And did you have any other players on your team who can pick up 3 yards on the Ravens? Like, so and it's 10%, so I still would have probably gone for it if that were me. I'm not trying to make excuses. I think they still should have gone for it. And I'm on the record, and I said so on Twitter. But I mean, that probably explains, and it probably, we when we look at the end of the season and we look back and do a complete sort of meta-analysis of like fourth down trends and which decisions were the biggest errors. Oftentimes we find the biggest errors are on the go for it side, which is very unexpected. And the reason is like injured kickers or injured punters.
Really
or
interesting.
Long snapper is in the locker room getting x-rays. There's usually some sort of context that the models aren't picking up.
Isn't this literally the broken leg problem that people talk about with when you go with models and when you don't go with models? Like one of the few times, if you have a good algorithm, one of the few times that you don't go with the algorithm is if you know it's missing something. And the example people give is like if you're supposed to model who's going to win a race and the runner has a broken leg, so then you don't use the model. And you're literally giving those examples from your review of sports.
So this is an interesting example. So I would assume, Brian, whether Baltimore won the game, lost the game, your estimate of their FPI or strength parameter wouldn't actually change that much. But what does change a lot is now their probability of, let's say, winning the AFC or going to the Super Bowl. So can you give us a sense of how big a magnitude of an effect you had there? Because it's not like if Baltimore, I don't even know who they're playing next week, whether they went for it and won 38-37 or lost 40-38, the probability of win ain't going to change bupkis, as we say. Now, I mean, I hate to say it, there's only 16 games left, and they got to catch up 2 games essentially on the Bills, and that's not going to be easy. So how much is their, let's call it, go to the Super Bowl probability change?
Yeah, honestly, Eric, you asked the exact same question I was going to anyway. It's like, can we kind of think about, because you talked about this 10% on a game level being dramatic. Like, can we talk about season level kind of errors given the sort of the tie-breaking consequences of this particular victory and stuff like that?
Yeah, we don't. I'm trying to look at it right now. So we would say, I think we had them 19.6 to make the Super Bowl percent. And right now it's gone up. 24%.
Because KC went down?
Probably because KC lost too.
Yeah.
They weren't, that was a 50-50 game going into the season against Buffalo. So we weren't banking on them winning as far as the model goes. So, all things considered, their percentage actually went up. I think their offense looked really good, and offense is sticky, and defense is kind of more about who you're playing oftentimes than, and so given that the Buffalo Bills have a great offense and a great quarterback, the Ravens defense just doesn't take as big a hit as you might think.
This lets me ask, this is a perfect lead in, Brian, to the question I was going to ask just a few minutes ago, but now that we moved on to this game, I can talk about it here. Is FPI built to do well at predicting who's going to go to the Super Bowl? Or no? That's what I assumed the answer was no. Like, you would build an entirely different model if you were trying to predict who's going to the Super Bowl versus strength parameters on a given week. A is playing B, how much we expect them to win by. So I just want to, I was going to ask that earlier, but now I have a perfect lead in for that. It wasn't built for super. So the fact that if you'd like, their FPI didn't change very much, but their probability of winning the Super Bowl actually went up. That's not that surprising, right? It's not inconsistent.
It's a bit surprising. I'm personally surprised.
Okay.
But it's a combination of things. Offense gets there's more confidence in an offense. If you're given the choice between being the best team on offense and the best team in defense in the league, you would choose offense just because the distribution of offenses is wider. The number one offense is always better than the number one defense. So there are some sort of intricacies. Whereas if it was basically a 40-40 game, and both the Bills and the Ravens offenses are kind of bumped up more than their defenses are bumped down.
And we're looking for the differential of that particular play, right? So really what we would be talking about is their change in probability if they had won versus. Yeah, I think for that particular situation, you could imagine that, yes, Baltimore still went up in Super Bowl odds even after losing, but they probably would have gone up even more if they had executed, won, and gone for it on fourth down, executed and won.
Well, yes, if they had the win in hand, absolutely. They're just sitting, in a better perch. But the FPI model doesn't take the win isn't anything special. There's no bonus for actually winning. I've built models that are hybrid that do both sort of EPA per play, like an efficiency.
No, but Brian, the Super Bowl prediction comes from a simulation, right? Like a forward simulation. So there it would definitely weight heavily the fact that they have a win when trying to do the projection.
Yeah, you presumably condition on the actual outcomes in that sim.
Yeah, they're completely separate enterprises.
That's my point.
You're estimating power models and then you're putting them through a simulation. And these are
Well, that's
completely
what you guys have
and
talked about, Kate, for a long time
Yeah.
about using the Massey Peabody. I forget the name of the platform you've talked about, but
yeah, you can we there some sims are better than others, and we've always Massey Peabody always had, I think, an advantage of having a good sim because we put a lot of uncertainty into it.
Yes,
and
that's the key.
That's the key, right? So Brian does that, but he's saying within his power ranking model, it doesn't
You
care
need to
whether
actually
you win
put
or
in
lose.
more uncertainty than your. It's kind of weird. Like if you, I should say, it's surprising because if you put in like the mathematically proper amount of uncertainty, then you get a result that's still overconfident. It's still over calibrated to.
No, that's
reality.
right.
You actually have to fudge it to you're kind of like, where is this extra uncertainty coming from?
But your whole game is to match the historical spread, right? So you have to parameterize whatever you need. You got to get in there to match the historical spread. Hey, by the way, let's take a moment, since we're talking about uncertainty and we're at the very end of this conversation with Brian. I want to take a moment to celebrate a few examples of communicating uncertainty, because it's so important and so hard, and there just aren't good examples of it. So we had Russo on our show last week talking college football? 2 weeks ago talking college football, and he did his playoff picks a very particular way, and then I noticed that Barnwell did his playoff picks the same way, which was not like expected value maximizing, but rather it was representative. And so both of them. So Russo, when he went to do his playoff picks, he said, "Look, I looked historically. I said in the preseason polls, how many of the top 5 usually make the playoffs?" He said 4 out of 5. So I got to kick one of those guys out when I make my playoff picks. And then of the next 5, how many make the playoffs? He said 2. So I picked 2. And then he goes on down. He says, how many who are outside the top 25 historically make the playoff? 3. So I got to pick 3 teams. He says he has to, just to be entertaining. This again is not an expected value maximizing bracket. This is a representative bracket, which I want to celebrate, because what he's doing is communicating to the reader how much uncertainty there is. It turns out Bill Barnwell does his playoff picks exactly the same way. I just read him last week.
Before Brian answers that, what I'd rather him do, by the way, as being a pure Bayesian here, is sample from that historical distribution, compute some sort of bracket, do it many, many times and average over that, as opposed to just saying the mode is 3 or so. And I'm just saying what I would like him to do. Who cares what I want? I'm just telling you.
I'm just trying to celebrate the communication of uncertainty, because it's really hard to do. And so anytime it happens well, it's notable to me. I want to give you one other example. We talked about Conley. Bill Conley is doing a new thing this year, which I think is friggin' fantastic. We do a version of it on our show periodically, but he's nailed it. He's saying, look, let's pick 4 long shot games and construct the foursome such that in expectation, one of the long shots is going to win. And so I think each week he's going to, in his weekly column, say, here's the quartet or whatever he calls it. And he picks 4 so that the expected probability of a long shot winning a game is 0.5. And it's fantastic because he says, look, any one of these you think, no way, but probability suggests that I'm going to build it so that it's half and half that we'll actually get one. And again, I think this is terrific communication of uncertainty, which is a very hard thing to do.
Yeah, no, chalk is boring. You know that, one out of these top 5 teams is not going to make the playoffs on average. You just don't know which one, and you don't know which team to replace them with. So if you really want to kind of maximize, you keep the top 5 in there, and that's no fun. That's not interesting. As dry as I am with all these FPIs and 4th down computations and just pure numbers and everything, I'm a fan too, and I completely endorse that. It reminds me of a strategy you need with brackets for the NCAA basketball tournament. If you can maximize, you can have the best model in the world, like an FPI or BPI rather, but times a million with the smartest AI and all that stuff, and you have the best bracket ever, and you're going to come in second place because the rando in the cubicle down the hall from you, at the office, is going to have a lucky one. There's just going to be one. If your league is big enough, there's going to be somebody out there that's just kind of a little bit lucky. And so we used to enter like the Kaggle basketball competition stuff. The way we would do it was we would have our BPI kind of chalk bracket, and then we would pick a couple, and maybe we would enter multiple of these brackets, each time picking a different kind of upset. And that was the way actually to win those competitions is
Brian,
to go, but you got to be lucky too.
What Cade said is really interesting to me because I remember both in a sports context and in my dissertation case in a survey context, we did exactly what Cade did. We said, when simulating data, what should I condition on? Like, in other words, should I condition on there's going to be at least 3 upsets? Should I condition on there's going to be at least 4 out of the top 5 teams, but no more than that? Like, it's a really interesting exercise to think about what features of the history do you want to bring into your simulation. Those are priors, but they're priors of a different kind. And I really think that's a fascinating, and I'm glad Cade brought that up. It brought back some fond memories, but it's an interesting question about what aspects of a picking from a, as you said, NCAA pool, or what, if you're simulating future NFL outcomes. We've always talked on this show, roughly half the teams in the NFL playoffs don't make it. Do you want to condition on that? What do you do? I think that's fascinating.
It's so hard. It's something we come back to every football season this time of year. It's like what especially like consider we're going to have random teams in the college football playoffs. We're way too sure we know what teams are going to be in there. And we have to keep learning that lesson over and over. And hopefully, if you're paying attention, you do learn a little bit over time. Hopefully, at our best, we're walking away from these conversations a little bit more of the uncertainty in the world as a result of them. Hopefully. Brian, we're going to have to let you go, man. We've kept you longer than we expected to. Always a pleasure. Please let us get you back in here before the season goes away. We always enjoy talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Brian Burke, longtime friend of the show. He is with ESPN. You can see his work there. He's behind the scenes on a lot of important work that they do. And every now and then we get him out in front, get him front of house as well, because he's always fun to talk to. Brian Burke, welcome back to Wharton Moneyball. Welcome to the second half of this week's show, an open lines segment, what we used to call open lines, open topics, just off the phone with Brian Burke from ESPN. Always catch Brian early in the season, find out what his off-season project has been, find out how he's taken in the NFL. He's a diehard. He didn't come clear as much, but he's from the Northern Virginia, Annapolis area, and he's a diehard Ravens fan. So he was talking dispassionately about something that is really kind of killing him. Guys, anything else coming out of that conversation or about the NFL in general? Week 1, we had the Eagles kicking us off with Jalen Carter kicked us off. That was a hell of a beginning to the season. Then we had games like all weekend. Chargers took down the Chiefs on Friday night. We had a great Monday night game last night with Minnesota coming back. I mean, what a debut from the QB out of Michigan for those guys that go down big, pick 6 even, and then 21 points in the fourth quarter. I mean, everybody had given up on those guys. So exciting for Minnesota. What else jumps out to you about NFL Week 1?
Just for me, just a couple other things. Under the right scheme and Aaron Rodgers can still play, right? I mean, threw 4 touchdown passes. I watched a lot of that game. He looked pretty good. Now, again, he's still immobile. If you rush him, he's still going to make some bad decisions. He's made that his whole career, even when he was more mobile than he is. But, I could see now why I'll call it the conservatism of Mike Tomlin, together with when you really need it from Aaron Rodgers. I'm upgrading my belief on the Steelers this year. The problem is they're in the AFC, and there's no chance to put them above Buffalo or Baltimore or Kansas City right now. But I can see now why the combination of Tomlin's coaching style and Rodgers could work effectively. So that impressed me.
Yeah.
Sorry. Let's stay with that one. Shane, you want to go ahead? And
Yeah, I was going to kind of ask you both whether you feel like, because we were fresh off of Brian Burke talking about how offense is stickier, maybe, or more predictive week to week than defense. What concerned me about the Steelers I guess the Steelers like long-term chances is more that their defense let up
Agreed.
that many, this is supposed to be an elite defense, and, maybe Justin Fields just had a great game, etc. But, if that was just kind of a one-off kind of performance from the Steelers defense, I think they really are a contender. If they've taken a step back, even like a marginal improvement that Rodgers brings is not going to be enough to really, as you said, push them into the conversation of real AFC contenders.
No, I think you would agree, Shane. If I told you right now at the end of the season the Steelers end up with a top 10 offense, you'd be like, "Whoa, that team could do something."
Because I'd be assuming a top 10 defense just because it's the Steelers.
So I mean, I think
exactly.
So that was one team.
Yeah.
Look, obviously, with the Colts, wasn't it Danny Dimes, right? Played for the Colts. And, the thought was, I didn't see a lot of the game. I saw some of it. I was watching on a lot of screens. And so he looked good. Now, it could be the team they were playing was bad, but all I'm commenting on is, this idea that he can't play good football is just not true. Now, that doesn't mean he won't have 16 other bad games, but I'm a believer, same way with academics when I evaluate people for tenure, Shane. If someone can write one great paper, maybe you could do it again. So there's no reason for me to believe that Daniel Jones, under the right circumstances, can't have, maybe he's a Sam Darnold-like season. Why not? He's not worse than Sam Darnold.
I don't think we can write off any quarterback based on kind of mediocre performance in a single system, especially if that system is a New York-based system, it seems like. So, no, I agree. Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, that we have countless examples of these, of quarterbacks kind of, looking mid or worse, not really kind of being legitimate starters in their first go-around. And they get in a different system with different personnel and an offensive line. And watch them do something. I don't know. That's not really a statement about whether the Danny Dimes in Indy is going to be a sustainable thing, or whether they're going to be at all a good team. But
find out a little bit.
We'll find
He's
out definitely behind a better offensive line.
Just quickly, we'll find out a little bit this week because it's Broncos at Colts, and the Broncos are at least a good team, if nothing else. So we'll find out something.
So a couple of things about next weekend. The Philly KC game. I mean, that's exciting. Give us the Super Bowl rematch in KC.
Can't wait for the highlights. The highlights are going to be so fun to watch.
Can we say if the Eagles beat the Chiefs, that the Chiefs are, in quotes, whatever this means, trouble?
Well, 2 games down. I mean, even if you're still a good team, that's a hole.
Yeah, that's a hole.
Teams dig out of it. I mean, I think Baltimore started 0-2 last year and dug out of it. But still, that's it's not a great spot to be in. Other ones that jump out to me. I'm really curious about Washington at Green Bay. I mean, Green Bay looks so good, but with Jalen Daniels, I mean, it's a good test for Washington. And then here's a sneaky one, guys. I just noticed it. I was going through the schedule. Atlanta goes to Minnesota. Atlanta lost a heartbreaker to Eric's team last weekend.
I was so upset about that.
Yeah. Here's the thing about Atlanta, Minnesota. The quarterbacks in that game are the quarterbacks from the NCAA final 2 years ago. So Michael Penix was the Washington quarterback when Michigan's J.J. McCarthy won the national championship in McCarthy's senior year. And those guys will be facing each other again in Minnesota.
I'm going to say
Monday night.
I watched
Sunday night game.
Sunday night. I watched all of the Bucks Falcons game, just to let you know. And I'm going to say this right now. I'm going to say the same thing I said about Jaden Daniels last year when I watched Washington against the Eagles in week 1. I'm sorry, Washington against the Bucks in week 1. You're not going to want to play Michael Penix Jr. very soon, because I'm going to tell you something. That guy can play football. He's got great decision-making. He's got a great arm. I mean, he made some throws no more than 5 quarterbacks in the NFL can make. Michael Penix Jr. can really play. Falcons were a good team. They were right there with the Bucks, man. I mean, it was a great football game.
Well, Bijan scored on that first drive as well, which is like, oh yeah, remember they've got Bijan Robinson, which is a good place to be as well.
50-yard.
Don't they have the highest paid? They must have the highest paid backup in all of football, too, as well, right? I mean, they
right. Okay, so real quickly, a note that ESPN put up today that is striking is how much kickoff returns are up, and it's fun. It really is fun. You forgot
That's
how much
great.
fun we lost with. So, guys, did you realize that we had dropped down at the low in 2023? The season was the average 22% of kicks were returned in 2023. Last year, when they changed the rules, which is great, but they had the you could get the ball at the 30 if you put it in the end zone. We only went from 22% to 33%. So they got a lift, but only up to 33%. This weekend, when the penalty was bringing the ball out to the 35, we saw 76% of the kickoffs were returned.
Kate, you're now making me reflect. I watched 10 different games this weekend, maybe more. I don't remember what, I'm not saying what didn't happen. I would have told you it was 98%. I don't remember one ball kicked into the end zone, and I watched as many games as I could. I don't remember one.
Yeah, they're even higher variance, I think, than they have been in the past. It's a major props to the NFL for playing with the rules like that.
Really,
it gives kickers kind of. I mean, we're already seeing. I feel like elite, like kickers kicking 60-yard field goals routinely, stuff like that. Gives kickers another thing to like kind of become elite at, to kind of work
really high up and land right on the 1 yard line.
Drop it right at the 5.
Okay, one last note on football before we change football. We do have college football. It was a bit of a quiet weekend, fun weekend. It was no huge games except for Florida going down to South Florida. But next weekend, got a couple notables just to kind of sell you guys. This is my weekly note to sell y'all on some college football. Clemson's going into Atlanta to play Georgia Tech, and they're only 4-point favorites. And this is kind of a test on Clemson because they lost game 1 and they looked bad last week against Troy. They were down like 16-0 at halftime.
They won,
so
but
people are skeptical on Clemson. Georgia Tech's solid. They're only 4-point favorites. That's going to be interesting. The big one, Florida's going to LSU. People were more excited about that before Florida lost. They're 9-point dogs, but there's a big SEC game. Let's see if Florida can bounce back. Texas A&M going up to Notre Dame, a night game in South Bend. 6.5-point underdog.
You just skipped on. You put these on here. You just skipped the most interesting game in my mind. You know what it is.
One,
you know,
which
USF at Miami, man.
Well, it is
USF
interesting.
Beats Miami. Wait. Let's be clear.
This is because
if USF beats Miami, you got to put them in the playoff.
No, they've beaten 2 ranked teams already, Shane. If they beat Miami, come on, they're in.
No, I forgot that
week
Eric's 2 or week 3 or whatever.
Eric's favorite saw is Group of 5. Group of 5. I forgot about it.
Usually doesn't kick until like November, but no, I like it. I like it. Get an early jump. You're always ahead of the game, Eric.
Yes.
Well, so undoubtedly USF is one of the stories of the season so far, but they are 16-point underdogs against Miami. So let's keep our powder dry on that one. But it would be fun
if they win.
Yeah, it would be fun. Okay, that's it for football for the week. That's a lot of football. Of course, that's where we are, early season, working some things out. We had some other major sports, in particular, the 4th and final tennis championship, major championship, U.S. Open, of course. Both sides of the bracket. But I didn't watch, but I have to say I was surprised. Not only did Alcaraz beat Sinner in the final, but he beat him in 4 sets, and they weren't even particularly close sets, at least some of them. So, Eric, give us the update here. How is it that Sinner's the best player in the world, but Alcaraz has beat him like 6 of the last 7 or something?
7 of the last 8, actually.
7 of 8 now. Okay.
Yeah. So in the last 2 years. So, well, first, Alcaraz now is number 1 again in the world. So let's just be clear about that. He took over the points lead. He is number 1 again. Look.
Well, just to be clear, the way we talked about Sinner all summer was that he was the next thing to freaking Jesus Christ, and so this is a little bit surprising to see this go down.
Yeah.
Or I guess to kind of more contextualize it, how often do you see like 2 kind of players at their kind of elite peak showing such an 8 out of 9 kind of imbalance in sort of matchup?
Good.
Yeah, so there's an imbalance there. Look, I think most people, tennis experts, I know 1 week we're trying to get him on. We had him on. We had to switch him off. We're trying to get Paul Annacone on, who would be great to talk about this. I think what's been shown over the last 2 years, for now, tennis is non-stationary. But for right now, Alcaraz's top end game is better than Sinner's top end game. It does not mean Sinner can't beat him. It does not mean Sinner doesn't have a better record against common opponents. He does, because his game has much lower variance. But Alcaraz knows the importance of every single match against Sinner, and he's going to bring his top-end game against Sinner. And look, he's 7-1 against Sinner. That is an imbalance. Look, when we look back on their career, Shane, this is what we do right now. Even though their eras were a little different, Djokovic has a slightly winning record against Nadal. Djokovic has a slightly winning record against Federer. Djokovic has a winning record against the other big two. It matters. When we look back on Sinner and Alcaraz, I'm not saying Sinner can't get there. It's now it's either 10-5 or 11-5. I don't remember which one it is. Alcaraz has a 10-5 lead, I think it is, over Sinner, and he's got 6 majors, and Sinner has 4. And if Alcaraz wins the Australian, which he says is his number 1 goal for next year, he'll be 22 years old with the career Grand Slam.
Do you when you think about kind of in your kind of personal sort of rankings of kind of greats going up against greats within a particular era, do you think more about total Grand Slam titles, or do you
No.
think more about the personal head-to-head?
I think about I think about the peak. I think about when the person was at his best. Because here's the problem with comparing Federer to Nadal
It's
or
not
Djokovic.
they're not aligned
It is,
exactly.
but not really.
Yeah.
Federer's 5-6 years older than Djokovic, and so they're head-to-head. I'm actually surprised. I happen to know Federer's record against Djokovic. I'm surprised he's even he didn't have a winning record, but Djokovic was 27-23 against Federer. And so that's a winning record, but it's not that winning a record. And for 5 of those years, Federer was definitely not at his prime. I think of if you want to be, and we know ELO has its problems. I tend to look at peak rating when the person was at their best. Could you beat them? And I say the same about Sinner that I say about Djokovic. Djokovic is not the greatest player I've ever seen. He's the GOAT. He's the most accomplished player. There's no debating it. But he's not the greatest player I've ever seen. If Federer has his best day, he won. If Nadal had his best day, he won. I saw Stan Wawrinka blow out Djokovic on his best day. But those best days come very, very infrequently. And if you're not at your best day, you had no chance against Djokovic.
Okay, so I just want to note that you're making there's a distinction here between their peak ELO rating and what you're talking about their best day, because you're saying even within an era when you'd have an ELO rating on a guy, you still have a distribution of performance, and
Correct.
you're talking about that right tail, when the guy's at his best. How good is that? And we don't have a number around that. And it'd be nice to have that assessed in some way. But I was struck I was recalling our summer-long conversations about Sinner and Alcaraz, and this characterization that some quants in tennis have put numbers around it and have validated this. There is a higher floor and a lower ceiling for Sinner. But the way you talked about it, Eric, is that it's almost as if Alcaraz, he isn't taking a random draw from his distribution. When he gets in these matches against Sinner, he's somehow able to shift his draws to the right side of the distribution.
It's not his variance isn't symmetric. He's somehow strategic in terms of when
at
he
least
can
in
kind of
those
bring
matches.
it.
Yeah,
At
at
least
least.
but also the I don't call it the rumors. Alcaraz's coach, Juan Carlos Ferrero, former number 1 in the world, by the way, said that they worked the entire summer on making Alcaraz more consistent and raising his floor. Alcaraz lost only 1 set. That was to Sinner in the finals, the entire U.S. Open. Had he won all 3 sets, he would have been the first person in the Open era of men's tennis to win the U.S. Open without
That's pretty incredible that
now, he
hasn't
lost
happened.
1 set to Sinner, and that happened. So he didn't go on. But just to let you know, I think we're going to see, this is what's scary for men's tennis. I think we're going to see the same peak from Alcaraz, but a higher floor. And that's even scary. That's really scary. And by the way, the other stat that I found interesting is the last 2 years, Jannik Sinner against everybody else in tennis but Alcaraz is 169-4. And he's 1-7 against Alcaraz. I mean, that is,
yeah, it's interesting.
That's
really
remarkable.
That's a separation of 1, 2, and the rest, I guess,
big
right
separation. But let me just say, I think we'd also want is, we're now at 8. And what I mean by 8, we're at 8 straight majors where it's been Alcaraz or Sinner. Let me just give them both credit. It's 4-4. They both have 4 of them. Now, how many in a row are we going to go where one of them wins? Could it be another, I'm making it up. Is it another 5 years?
No, we won't go 5 more years. But what's the longest run we've seen with 2 guys taking all the slams?
I think this is it now.
8.
Because remember, there was the big 3.
Yeah, and how many? That was
No, there was the big 3.
Yeah, what
and
was
then
the
there
gap?
was Sampras and Agassi, and
Yeah.
Jim Courier won one every now and then, and there was Michael Chang won one, and and even during the the Borg, McEnroe, Connors, there was always more than 2. And so I think this is the longest. It would not surprise me if this grows at least to double digits. Like, why next year would you predict anybody but one of the 2 of them?
This is a good over under, Eric. What do you give us an over under? Me and Shane we'll bet. Give us a number and we'll take.
Okay, we're at 8 right now.
Yeah.
I am going to go 13.5.
What do you want, Shane?
So that's another year and a half, basically.
It's not basically. That's it. Next year and a half.
I guess
Before you pick, let me say why I picked that number.
Eric, 14.5 would be a year and a half, no?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. You're right. 6, 14. I meant 4. Then I'll go with 14.5. Let me say why I'm going with that number. Like, a lot of times you could say, well, you don't even know the set of potential players. I do. Like, no one's coming up from the bottom that's just, like, I don't know about now. There's no 17-year-old. Like, it's going to have to be something like a Ben Shelton, or it would have to be someone like a Alex Aliassime. It's going to have to be, or Zverev finally gets his act together for 7 matches, or Medvedev has some resurgence. Like, they're so good. It can't be some random 17-year-old that's now 8. It's just not.
Okay.
It's not going to. So it's within the set of players we have. So I'll go with 14.5. Thank you. 14.5. That's my over-under. That's my rationale.
Shane, what do you got? What do you got, buddy?
I guess I'll take the under just to be interesting, and because we just had a conversation with Brian Burke about uncertainty.
Good for you.
And I guess what would make it happen? My mechanism, I guess, is maybe all it takes 1 or 2 injuries, and all of a sudden it's that's probably one of the biggest factors in this is both of these players, or at least one of them, staying healthy long enough to kind of keep this streak going.
My view is they better both be injured, because if you're playing one of them right now,
it does sort of sound like you almost you need both an injury and an impressive run.
I think, by the way, I don't know this,
or 2 injuries.
I'll get this stat and I'll post it on @WMoneyball. I think this is the largest gap in the history of men's tennis between number 2 and number 3. Sinner has like a 4,950, almost 5,000 point lead on the number 3 player, which I think is still Zverev. And just to let you know, you get 2,000 points for winning a major. And he has a 5,000 point lead on number 3. So just to let you know how big the gap is, to norm it, it's big. And Shane, which one are you taking?
I'm going to go under also. I think it's the only reasonable way to go. I think we're supposed to go that way. It's almost like, in golf, Shane, I don't know if you play enough golf, but Eric, I think, does. There's the amateur side of the cup and the pro side of the cup. Amateurs tend to play too little break. They're often below the cup at the end of the putt. I feel like this, we're supposed to be professional statisticians. Some of y'all actually are professional statisticians. I think you got to take uncertainty, the things that we're outside the model. And so I'm going to go, I don't love it, and it's not fun, but I'll go under as well.
I'll tell you what I don't, this is a great discussion for a statistical topic. I don't think we have as good enough intuition as to what I'll call the distribution of the maximum of multiple players. Because remember, let's eliminate Shane just for 1 second injuries. Now we have to talk about, we have 2 people who have this much distance to number 3. You're right. There's variability, but now I'm taking the maximum of the 2 because, that I don't think we have really good intuition for. As a matter of fact, you could argue that's even a farther exceedance than we have intuition for, which was why I'm comfortable with my 14.5.
You can imagine, Eric, to take that further, like if you put 3 in the set or 4 in the set, we'd probably have really bad intuition because you probably start getting
like
real
64 of 68 majors going to the big 3 over a 17-year period.
Exactly. That kind of thing. So it's a fun little problem, actually. All right, guys, we're down to just a couple of minutes before we should wrap this thing up. But let's talk baseball. I mean, it's been a quiet week in my mind mentally because there's been so much football, but there have been baseball games being played. What's going on over there? What do we need to be paying attention to?
Well, we had a couple. It's worth noting that this is continuing to be. We haven't had a no hitter yet this year.
But Shane,
After average, we've come so very close over the last couple weeks.
This is
Twice.
I'm so glad you put this in the rundown because, like, there've been no hitters, but can we actually just basically then say that even if this year ends with none, I mean, we had what 1 to 8 2/3 innings. Were they both to 8 2/3 innings?
We should have like a no hitters in expectation or something extra stat that kind of like gives us like 0.98 of a no hitter or something like that.
Or a distance metric. Like, suppose I told you we have none this year, but we had 10 no hitters through 8 2/3. You'd be like, oh, all right, well, that seems reasonable. So I'd like this hard cut right at 0 hits. Like, I understand what a no hitter is, but I'm just saying.
I know it's a particularly like weird.
You know
it's a particularly weird discretized consequence of what we're generally seeing across baseball is increased offense. A little bit, and so another kind of example of that kind of discretized, consequence of that is we still got 4 players now on track to hit over 50 home runs, and that's only happened twice before in MLB history. So, if Judge unfortunately has dropped off a bit because he hasn't been playing. But Rowley, Schwarber, Ohtani, and Suarez are still all on pace for over 50 home runs. And if they hit that, that's something that also has not happened in a long time.
When has that happened before? You said twice before. What era?
It was I looked up 2001. So both were steroid era.
That's what I figured.
1998 and 2001. The last time it happened, just to name the guys, in 2001, it was Alex Rodriguez, Juan Gonzalez, Sammy Sosa, and Barry Bonds.
That's all steroid. And how about 98?
98, well, okay, so 98, Mo Vaughn, Ken Griffey Jr., Sosa, and McGuire.
Steroids.
Nobody's a coach. Ken Griffey Jr. steroids. Here.
Alleged, in case anyone's listening, alleged.
But yes, this would be the first time outside of the steroid era.
We could call that that's the peak steroid era.
I prefer to think about that as that was my grad school, Chicago grad school era. It was a good time to be a Cubs fan. It was a good time to be in Chicago.
Oh, people slam it down, but it was an exciting time to watch baseball. I mean, we got what we kind of.
It's another one of those interesting stats, by the way, because we've never had more than 4, right? Obviously, and there must have been many years in the 20s where I'll make it up, Babe Ruth and Hack Wilson, or Babe Ruth and this person, but like Gehrig never hit 50 in a season. People don't know this. Aaron never hit 50 in a season. That's what people criticize Aaron for. I consider him the home run leader, but whatever. He never hit 50. Mays hit 50 in a season once in his career. So, let's not make it seem like hitting 50's that easy. It's not.
No, I think it's notable. I think what we're seeing here is kind of the combination of some rule changes that have increased offense and helped hitters over pitchers in general. Plus the fact that, we've got like a generation of like kind of orientation towards home run hitting, maybe, the 3 true outcomes, whatever, that I think is kind of driving a lot of this. We have a lot more home run hitters now than we, had in the early years of baseball.
Yep. I'm
all right, guys. All right, guys. Well, it's only going to get more interesting in baseball over the next couple of weeks as we come down to the wire, playoff races, etc. We'll look forward to it. All right. Why don't we wrap it there? Been a full hour here on Wharton Moneyball for the whole crew. Shane Jensen been in here the whole time. Eric Bradlow been in here the whole time. Adi Weiner in absentia. This has been Cade Massey. Many thanks to Dion Simpkins, who I think we named the 5th Beatle today, Dee Patel, Boss Lady, and our producer, Marissa Rain. I appreciate all y'all do. And thank you guys for listening. Come back and join us next time. Between now and then, enjoy your sports.